and welcome to this episode of Sunset TV, in which we're looking at an extremely important issue in terms of the engagement of the Indian military, the paramilitary, the police forces in Jammu and Kashmir, particularly the valley. And the subject is of extreme importance in terms of how the future of an insurgency is managed and even eliminated if this aspect of battling insurgency is looked at in all its seriousness by the forces involved. And we have a panel which is unique. I could not think of any two better people to be our experts today. We have Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain, who actually needs very little introduction because he is a prominent voice on issues related with Kashmir in our media, but has been not only the corps commander in Srinagar, but has commanded formations right up the chain in Jammu and Kashmir. Brigade in Uri, Division in Baramulla, Corps in Srinagar, and is also the Chancellor of the Central University of Kashmir. And we have Mr. Vaid, who's been Director General of Police in J&K, and a man who enjoys a very, very strong reputation as a police officer in this troubled region, and his deeds have often spoken for his intent and his desire to make a contribution. So welcome both of you on the show. I'll start with you, Sir General Hasnain. You know, winning hearts and minds is an important aspect of insurgencies, but often ignored by gung-ho soldiers who feel that if you eliminate the bulk of the militants in and around your area, the battle has been won. But your experience and those of us who study the subject will tell us that this is far from true. The British started incorporating this concept in the 1950s in battling the Malayan insurgency and went on implementing this right up to Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, the Americans refused to learn from the British experience, and the disaster of Afghanistan is there for all of us to see. In India, the armed forces in particular, and even the paramilitary forces, have followed a far more sensible approach to winning hearts and minds. And General Hasnain, sir, I remember many years ago, I think about a decade ago, you also figured on the cover of Outlook magazine for doing precisely this, for winning hearts and minds. So could you elaborate, sir?
Thank you, Maroof. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to your show. It's a pleasure, absolutely. I also need to endorse exactly what you said about our fellow panelist, Mr. Vaid. Mr. Vaid, not only an iconic DGP in Jammu and Kashmir, has also been injured in operations in Baramulla. This needs to be remembered because his contribution is immense as far as Jammu and Kashmir. But Maroof, let me also endorse every word you have spoken in the introduction. And the two examples you have quoted, both the Malaya campaign and the Northern Ireland campaign. I happened to visit Northern Ireland for this particular purpose, to have a look as to what could be applied to Jammu and Kashmir. And I did realize that the British, through the Good Friday Agreement in 1997, had done exactly this. They brought economics to the forefront, development to the forefront, went into an overreach and outreach to the populace around, and through that, put everything else on the back burner, put only development and social engineering in front. Now, this is something that we have been attempting to do in Jammu and Kashmir too. I would strongly advocate that. I would strongly say that the Indian Army followed the British pattern, understood it very well. We did it in Nagaland, we did it in Northeast. We even attempted it in Sri Lanka, of all places. And actually, the Indian Army has implemented this even in UN operations. If you remember the Somalia example, in Somalia, it was outstanding, absolutely. The UN was surprised to see the manner in which the Indian Army does its winning hearts and minds, how it implements the doctrine of winning hearts and minds. So having said all this, most people tend to think, the word you used was absolutely correct, gung-ho. most people who enter into CI operations the first time, CT operations, think that this can be overcome. Victory can be achieved through the AK-47, counting terrorists, the number of terrorists killed at the end of the year, and things like that. Not realizing that you are only actually addressing the symptoms. You are not addressing the causes and the issues which are there. That is more important. Because an example which I always related, on one side are the security forces, on the other side are the terrorists, and in the middle, the sandwich filling is always the populace. The populace keeps getting grinded in this process. And they are the center of gravity. And this center of gravity, whichever side it swings, that side will be the victor. Last issue on this, I would strongly say, is that we followed Sun Tzu's old principle. You win a war without fighting a war. You fight a war here through peace, through establishment of peace. Soldiers need to be told that you have to only use the extreme elements of violence to bring about peace. You can actually use peace to bring peace. So keeping that particular aspect in mind, winning hearts and minds is an essential aspect of CICT operation. And the last issue on this, as you go along in a campaign, this importance keeps increasing. It may be 20% in the case of Jammu and Kashmir in 1989 when conflict initiation started. By the time I was there in 2010, 11, we were at conflict stabilization and the later stages of it. I always advocated we needed 80% soft power, 80% of winning hearts and minds, which was more important than actually killing terrorists.
Okay, so very comprehensive, sir. And, a few people know Kashmir as well as you do with your hands-on experience and your emotional connect, as I may put it, with the people on the ground. And therefore, in between the crossfire, between the security forces and the militants, the people get caught up in the crossfire. They should not be forgotten because eventually you have to win them over to win the battle. And Vaid Saab, I, of course, echo General Hasnain's compliments for you. I've been reading and following you and your actions for years. I want you to explain that at the basic level of implementing the WHAM, that is Winning Hearts and Minds campaign, we have to ensure the dignity of individuals, the people, and their families and large groups who sometimes get dissuaded become part of the crossfire. And this has been the case again and again in Jammu and Kashmir, particularly the Kashmir Valley. And public opinion has been subverted because of that. Now, how is it that we can win over the alienated groups by ensuring that our intent is as good, if not much better, than that of the militants who say that we will free you and give you a life that you deserve?
Thank you, Maroof. At the outset, first, I must mention the great contribution of General Hasnain. In fact, if one general who's remembered in Kashmir Valley, common man, I'm telling you, not on the face, but this is the fact on ground. General Hasnain is remembered with a lot of fond memories by people during his Corps commander days. That's why he commands a lot of respect in the valley. Now, coming to the subject, see, the human resource of any nation state is the most important component, not the territory. Ultimately, the human component constitutes the nature of the character of that place. And Kashmir is no different. People of Kashmir are very sensitive. They're very keen observers. I would say, they're very, very intelligent people, like any other part of India. Initially, I have been watching the terrorism in last more than 3 decades. Early 90s, there, when suddenly when situation deteriorated and forces were airlifted from different parts of the country and brought to Kashmir Valley, the last man on the ground, whether it was an army man or a CRPF Jawan or whoever, he came with with a mindset that in Kashmir everybody is terrorist, And let me admit, in the early 90s, handling processions, there were certain mistakes where we could avoid casualties which were unwarranted. But slowly, the Indian security establishment, the Army, Jammu and Kashmir police, and the paramilitary understood how important is the Aam Admi in Kashmir and his role in checking the terrorism. And in fact, this realization in the security grid that winning the proxy war, the terrorism unleashed by Pakistan, the most important component is the people of the. And let me tell you here, the J&K police faces tremendous task in this particular aspect of administration. In fact, Army has been doing tremendous job. Let me mention here, the kind of services on the border they are able to provide during the encounter sites, how a Kashmiri Aam Admi is handled during encounters, during processions, during no, all these are very very important things because if you analyze most of the Kashmiri boys who joined terrorism, the common complaint of theirs is my brother was tortured by police, so I entered. Seeing harassment to my brother, I became a terrorist. Now, that shows how sensitive the boys in Kashmir are, and they need to be handled very, very carefully. The dignity, the individual dignity which each individual in Kashmir demands from the police or security forces. Now, it is a very complex situation where you have an enemy who's exploiting small incidents in the rest of India to showcase the Aam Admi in Kashmir, how you are unsafe in the hands of security forces of India, and how your identity is at risk. But we have, let me admit here, we have very are the security forces and Indian state as a whole, the kind of counter narrative which should have been with the people to check what Pakistan has been exploiting has been weaker initially in the 90s. But
Yes.
the kind, yeah.
No, that's true. I'll just come to you afterwards on this counter narrative aspect because, we have limited time on the show and we want to cover a lot of issues. But thank you very much for this straightforward, straight from the heart remarks about who's been doing how much. But General Hasnain, I want to go back to you, sir. And I want to ask you that you had created an initiative where you were credited with the novel way of interaction with the locals. It was called Awami Sunwais, a model of interactions like town halls. And how was it different from the initiatives of the others in the past and thereafter?
Firstly, thank you for that question, Maroof. It's a very important question. But I must admit that whatever I did was only a continuation of what others had done before. They did it superbly. I only followed it up with maybe some different methodology. What I perceived at that time was that Operation Sadbhavna, which is the Indian Army's operation for winning in hearts and minds, or military civic action actually, was operational for 13 to 14 years. I was the Corps commander. I found that this was not getting the transformational traction which was required. It was, it was being done in a slightly transactional way where the money was there, the resources were there. We were looking at medical, we were looking at education, we were looking at national integration, human resources development, small infrastructure. All this was being done superbly. But it was what we wanted to do was to cultivate our opinion, our influence into the minds and hearts of the populace, which was not being achieved. So I strongly advocated that along with Sadbhavna, we need to do a direct communication outreach. What we did was, and this came at the behest of a young journalist who spoke to me when he met me at one particular Awami Sunwai, and he's the one who told me, you are actually doing a town hall here. I said, exactly. He said, what is the purpose? And then I explained my concept. The concept was to give a platform, a secure platform, to allow the local administration, the local police, the local political community to come on board with the army. Because the army was being seen to be everything at that time. And allow everyone else to come in. If you really want to bring an all-of-government approach, it's not the army which must be taking the lead. It must be all these organizations. Let them come forward. I will make a short introduction, and after that, all the other representatives of government will be there, and they will speak to the people. Now, this interactive process with the people, we had about 34, 35 such meetings, just proved to be a winner. Because there were issues which could be resolved immediately on the spot. There were lots of things which could be carried away. And more than that, the underlying part of it, the perception which the people could gather. Both sides could perceive things with each other. And that was making a difference. It is not psychological warfare. At the dirty term, I would say it was more about influence. It was influence operations at their best.
Very well put, sir. Very well put. I think, to get to the root of the problem, you have to understand where the problem is. You can do cosmetic surgery on top, but it'll peel off after a while. Mr. Vaid, sir, I want to bring out another very big challenge. I know in counterinsurgency, police forces face. And that challenge is about essentially how to make the policeman feel secure in doing his job, because he's doing what is mandated from him by the government. He is doing what is expected of him, but his family is not living in barbed, secured military camps all the time. So he has to tread, as I would say, on thin ice. And it's a very big challenge because at any time, his family could become victims of those militants or terrorists wanting to blackmail him and people like him. So there is one challenge to provide not just the connect to the man on the street with the national agenda, but the other challenge is to provide a sense of security to the policemen who are recruited locally. And therefore, the army units will come and go, but the policeman stays on. Your response.
Maroof, very well put. In fact, I would say the most difficult task is of the constable in Kashmir, not even mine. I am a protected person. As Director General Police, I have my everything protected, but not my constable. He lives in the villages amongst the people where terrorists openly roam. His family is there. He has to go on chutti. He has to go on leave. This is not true of other paramilitary forces or even army. While they are operating in Kashmir, they are in protected cantonments. Some boys of army and paramilitary who actually belong to Kashmir have this problem when they come on chutti and they have become target. But for a policeman, this is everyday affair, and he faces while he has to perform his constitutional duty, he faces his family. In fact, most of the time, his worries on his mind are about security of his family, his children. His children have to go to school. His wife has to go to bazaar for shopping. So he has a great paradox. And I recall in the early 90s, most of the constables would come and whisper in our ear, "Sir, I don't want any reward, but in so and so village and so house, ghar, the terrorists are hiding." So he would perform his duty without showing his name, without wanting his name to be brought on the reward list or promotion list or whatever benefit you get out of anti-terrorist operations. Now, that is the kind of role these unsung, unknown heroes were doing, which no one knows in the rest of the country. But slowly, the SOG component, which later on became operational, have been doing. And much of the information, I think General Hasnain will bear me out, much of the information in those days are now, last few years, the tech information is coming up. But those days, I'm talking of early 90s and late 90s, 90, more than 90% information used to come from these local policemen. And on that basis, we used to operate. Now, for him, it is a very difficult task. There was a time I recall when I was SP in a district, my deputy SP was killed. And when he has to be worried, there was no place for that man because he was not provided even a decent burial. I had to bury him somewhere else. Now, that is the kind of atmosphere these local policemen were working. Now, coming to the winning point of your main topic of winning hearts and minds, let me mention here, Sadbhavna by Army has done a tremendous job, medical facilities, veterinary facilities to the local common people. We in J&K police had civic action programs, and we got a lot of money from government of India. Small things like small bridge, repairing a transformer, building a toilet for the women in a ladies' school, small activities like this undertaken by local police. One lot of respect for the local police. And then when I was DGP, I also started a program like Police Community Partnership Group. And this I elaborated in a government order which I issued, in which it was directed that each police station will have police community partnership groups constituted of respectable people, people who have no criminal record, people who are well-meaning for the community, all communities, all castes, all shades of society constitute this group, and SHO will hold a meeting of these people at least once in a month, and the sub-divisional police officer at least twice a month, and then the district SP in 2 or 3 months. The most of the issues brought in these were small things like, sir, our transformer is gone. There's no electricity. A water supply is stopped. Most of the issues were of civil, because civil administration had collapsed. I'm talking of 90s and late 2000.
I know.
Now, there was no one to respond to the people's problem and their grievances. Now, policeman could play a pivotal role, requesting deputy commissioner to come there, Axian electricity to come there, Axian water works to come there, and resolve people's problem right there. And in the next meeting, that officer had to comply and give people the assurance that we have undertaken this project and we are repairing.
Very true, sir.
This brought a lot of closeness between the people and local police. And when people saw that police is helping them, the army is helping them, the paramilitary is helping them, they are well-wishers, they are doing things which are for their good. Now, when people of Kashmir realized this, that is how things started changing. And I'm talking of the mistakes committed in the early 90s, how the atmosphere has changed. And now today you see the kind of terrorism which has come down from roughly 2,500 operating at a time, today less than 200. Now this is because of tremendous effort put in by everyone in the all the forces to bring people closer. And this is what a great mess I understand has been the contribution of police and security forces.
Very comprehensive, sir, and very well put in. I've always believed that if you want to solve the problem of insurgency, and I've said this in various forums, that you solve the problems in Kashmir you will not have a problem of Kashmir. And you'll understand what of Kashmir means. It is India's adversary and rivals from across the boundaries. General Hasnain sir, a quick last shot. I want to understand from you the importance of social media and why we haven't used it as effectively as Pakistan has, and as we have evidence now of about 35 YouTube channels being shut. Some years ago, a lot of dish TV and TV related programming that came through cable was shut. Why were we allowing it to undo our good effort for so many years?
Maroof, the initial discussion of ours on this program itself answers that question. We were looking at this whole approach, the concept of operations, as only hard power, not realizing that this is hybrid conflict. And in hybrid conflict, hard power only has a small component, a role which is a very small component. We needed communication strategy, as you're saying. Sadbhavana was also a part of communication strategy, but was not being exploited sufficiently. When social media came around about 2010, 11 into the valley, I remember I was one of the first few who was very excited, and I tasked my people to get onto it. But I realized that social media by the army in an isolated manner was worthless, because what you needed was an integration, an integrated approach. You needed an academic background. You needed a lot of material to populate the issues that you were putting out, etc. This game could be played by the army up to an extent and nothing more. What has happened today, and I'm glad to say this, today I think a slightly greater integration has taken place, and this game is being played in a better way slightly. But I agree that Pakistan has had taken the lead, primarily because they looked at information as a weapon system. And they used it for very long. You are aware of the ISPR, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So the ISPR being a greater thing than the ISI itself. So I think today things are changing, not at the rate at which we definitely demand it.
Right.
So hopefully something better will happen in the future.
Right. Thank you. You brought up the key points, and Mr. Vaid, last 2 or 3 sentences, and that is the image projection of all the good work that security forces and the government does is largely left to the media. And the media, both Indian media and foreign media, that quite happily roam around all over in the valley, have not been favorable in their reportage. Why?
I would put it very bluntly. Many of them are infiltrated. Many of them. I'm sorry, I don't cast any aspersions on the media, but I was surprised even some of those who were working for national media, foreign media, were not very fair to the security forces. And I can quote examples.
Now, we'll let the examples be, sir. I think you made the key point that really they were not being objective, but they were being driven by their masters for a purpose. But thank you very much to both of you for your wisdom, for your insights, which are rare to get on a television channel. And I hope that our viewers and our service officers will learn from what you had to say. Until our next episode, goodbye.